And now some words from our sponsor that you don't understand and I can't pronounce. Flap, pustule, jowls, nugget, gurgle, smear, curd, bulbous, bulbous, bulbous. What is it?
It's bulbous.
Bulbous. Tender, dongle, pork, and moist. Whether you're a construction worker, warehouse worker, or, frankly, a radio host, if you hear certain words on the job site, work can be uncomfortable. So, at least get work gear that's comfortable. Timberland Pro work shirts, pants, and boots, head to toe. Timberland Pro, not uncomfortable.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Carl Tart.
I'm Jackie's Neil.
And I'm Edgar Mobley's here.
And we are the host of a new show called Culture Kings on How Stuff Works. We cover a whole range of topics on this show, but one of the things that we talk about the most is sports because we love them. Jackie, what's the sports opinion you have?
The Cubs are the best team of all time.
That's ridiculous. Edgar?
Kevin Durant is the greatest player of all time.
Nonsense. My favorite basketball player is LeBron James. He's the king of the world, and we'll get into that on Culture Kings. Download it wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere. Just listen to it, damn it.
These are not the clowns you're looking for. Well, we are clowns, but we're not your usual clowns. It's Spain and Fitz filling in for the Batard show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. It's a little early for us, Fitz, but we're gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I found out I can't do this show in my pajamas, which was a little disappointing.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it was a little awkward when I came into ESPN today and my wool kid onesie and found out that that's not work appropriate. There we go.
Well, probably not as awkward as Conor McGregor's night last night. And we were just starting our regular Spain and Fitz show, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern every weeknight, when we were reacting to Conor's outburst. And now, since we have taken the night's rest and woken back up, much has happened. Conor McGregor now charged with assault. The conversation is still going on, Fitz, about whether this was a ploy, some sort of publicity stunt, which I think is sort of problematic for both Conor and the UFC, that even after charges have been filed, we're still wondering if this is a joke to get them ratings. But when we left the show yesterday, I have to admit that a big part of me thought nothing will be done about this. This is just a continuation of the bad behavior that we see that's sort of embraced and beloved by fight fans. People can't control themselves during the weigh-in. People can't control themselves during the pressers. Throwing stuff at a bus just seems like the inevitable development that we could all have expected. But, boy, it sure feels like this is a lot bigger than what I thought it was yesterday.
Well, and this one didn't hit me in the right spot from the beginning. And it's funny because as much as we joke about the fact, and I agree, guys, it does look like a scripted WWE moment when he's in the loading area of the Barclays Center and conveniently there just happens to be things he can go grab and throw at a bus. I understand that. But when you're talking about UFC 223 and having 3 fights at this point affected, 2 canceled because of the injuries specifically that were caused, one of those fights on the main card, there's no way the UFC wins out of this situation. This is a worst case scenario for the UFC where a fighter that they can't seem to rein in, a fighter that has no contract right now to fight with them, has caused the upcoming UFC pay-per-view to have a cancellation. That is a terrible moment for UFC.
Right, and now the question is, what does this mean for Conor's future with the UFC? We'll get into that, but in case you missed it, basically what happened was the 2 fighters that were set to fight this weekend, whoever wins the lightweight bout will get the lightweight title. And this made Conor McGregor angry that he would be stripped of his title. So he tweeted out, "You'll strip me of nothing, you do nothing, see you next Tuesdays." And he shows up after the pressers and was apparently let into the arena with, 15 or 20 of his entourage, because they were credentialed to attend the event. And the employees of his website were credentialed. So they come in with Conor. He goes to the loading bay, and he tries to throw a barricade at the bus, carrying the fighters, including this Khabib Nurmagomedov, I can't say his name, who's maybe going to take over his title. And then he breaks a window with a hand truck that he threw. There's like 5 different Zapruder film type grainy videos of this. Breaks a window and causes damage to multiple fighters. One fighter suffered facial cuts, is not going to fight. Another had abrasions on his eyeball, his cornea. He's not fighting. So as you mentioned, those are the 2 guys injured. And then McGregor's teammate has been removed from his fight because of his involvement. So you're right. This is as much publicity as it gets and as much as it plays into what a lot of people like about this sport in terms of the sort of mano y mano, guys that can't be tamed. These are real men. It's bad for them. They're losing a ton of money. And imagine how those fighters feel about what Conor did to them.
Yeah, and tell me why, if I'm a UFC fan at this point, the fight just became more watchable. The card, 223, became more watchable because it didn't. For all these,
because he's not even in it. Right? If he was, sure, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And we could say, well, you know what? They're gonna play the long play. There'll be a fight a year from now between some of the guys involved in this. That's fine, but that still hurts them. Right? Why do that 2 days before a pay-per-view and hurt your ability to sell your product? Now, UFC President Dana White was on Get Up this morning. He talked about the sports fighting conspiracies. This is what he told everybody.
This is the last stunt on earth we would ever pull. I mean, this is embarrassing for the sport. And, for obviously for the UFC, and this is the furthest thing from a stunt.
I'm buying it here only, Fitz, because it is negatively affecting the card. And that's where they don't want to get hit, is where the money is. But I really took a grievance with yesterday Dana White saying it's the most, horrific thing that's ever happened to the sport. I know War Machine was out of fighting when that happened. I believe he hadn't fought in a little while, but War Machine almost killed his girlfriend or fiance at the time. We've got Mayweather, who's technically crossing over by boxing against McGregor, and he's a multi-time domestic violence assailant. Like, there's a lot of bad stuff that's gone down in the fight world. So the idea that this is the worst ever, I think, is maybe trying to whitewash over your past and forgetting that if you try to pretend like you've been clean this whole time before, it's never going to get fixed, right? And like I said, this is sort of an inevitable development to me from the outside as not a big UFC person. And I acknowledge that I'm not a huge UFC boxing person. But to me, when I'm watching all of this happen, it doesn't feel outside the realm of that sport. Whereas if this happened in the NBA, right, where if they allowed people in their pressers to be jawing at each other and coming to blows, they wouldn't be playing the next day. And in boxing, MMA, that's just sort of accepted. So it doesn't surprise me as much as any other sport. I
mean, that's part of what we love about watching. If you're a fan of any of it, you love the press conferences because you want the guys to get nose to nose and see exactly where that line is crossed. And how often do people watch those fights and what they're really hoping to see when you watch the press conferences for a fight to break out. It's also interesting. We talked last night on our show with Brett Okamoto, who covers MMA for ESPN, and he talked about how there have been backstage sort of problems with fighters in the past simply because they're cutting weight, and so they're tired and they're cranky. And you think about like the storm that has to be created here, where everything lined up perfectly in the worst possible way for UFC here, and now you have an explosion. And if ultimately it means the end of the UFC's relationship with Dana White, which I don't think with Conor McGregor, which I don't think it does. If it does mean that, that's an even bigger blow to the UFC because they need to find the next Conor McGregor.
Yeah, I completely agree. We talked about this on Spain and Fitz last night. There are certain guys that sort of become bigger than their sport. Tiger Woods is one of them, and a lot of people would argue that lately Conor McGregor has become bigger than the sport. And when you lose that name and you lose that brand and that personality, that's tough to rebuild. At the same time, part of Conor McGregor's brand, a big part of it, and this is not to take away from his prowess as a fighter, but his mouth is how we all first heard about him. Right? His trash talking, his sharp wit, his clever barbs, that was how we kind of all first started to know of Conor McGregor. So when you are validated so much for this personality, this brand, this sort of being a heel, then when you take it to this extent, there are a lot that are still going to be on your side, but you might have lost the people in the middle.
The thing that really hits me, again, is I've been to a bunch of the UFC events in Vegas. I used to go a lot with my brother out there. I've watched the MMA stuff for years. I'm not a passionate fan, but I'm a fan of it. The fact that Dana White can sit there in one breath and say this is the most disgusting thing that's ever happened to UFC, and then when he's asked if they'll work together again, he's like, well, I don't know. I just don't know the answer to that right now. Is such a slap in the face in the entire process. I mean, I don't expect Dana White to say anything else other than this wasn't staged and other than this is awful, but at least back it up with a little bit of manhood and come in and say, and we're not going to work with him again. Ultimately, Dana will go wherever the dollars are.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah, so we'll keep you updated. Right now, McGregor formally charged with 3 counts of misdemeanor assault and a count of felony criminal mischief. This according to the NYPD. He turned himself into police last night. And we have more sound from Dana White from this morning on Get Up a little later in the show. We saw this and thought to ourselves, of all the athletes out there, who is the least sound of mind? Is it the MMA fighter? Is it a race car driver? Is it an X Games fighter? Help us figure that out on Spain and Fitz on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Spain and Fitz, at Sarah Spain, at Jason Fitz. Who are the craziest of all athletes? Hey, guys, it's time to freshen up your bathroom with high-quality products from Dollar Shave Club. Seriously, get an amazing high-quality shave using the Dollar Shave Club Executive Razor along with their Dr. Carver's Shave Butter. They also have shampoo, body wash, toothpaste, everything. So clean up your bathroom and your daily routine. Join Dollar Shave Club today. For just $5 with free shipping, you'll get the 6-blade Executive Razor plus trial sizes of shave butter, body cleanser, and one wipe Charlie's. Then keep the blades coming for a few bucks more a month. Get yours at dollarshaveclub.com/Dan. That's dollarshaveclub.com/Dan. And now your SportsCenter update. Jordan Spieth leads the Masters after shooting a 6-under 66 yesterday. Tony Finau and Matt Kuchar at 2 shots back, while Tiger Woods trails by 7 strokes at +1, tied for 29th. Tiger begins his second round at 1:27 Eastern today. You heard us talk about it. UFC star Conor McGregor, charged by New York police with 3 counts of assault and a count of criminal mischief, turned himself into police after an incident yesterday in Brooklyn. According to the New York City Police Department, he unexpectedly showed up at the UFC 223 media event at Barclays, caught on camera throwing a hand dolly through a window of a bus carrying UFC fighters. Also, after learning that Kyrie Irving will miss the rest of the season, including the playoffs with a knee injury, Boston's odds to win the NBA Finals jump from 20-1 to 80-1, according to the Westgate Las Vegas Sportsbook. Celtics will be no lower than the 2 seed in the East when the playoffs begin.
Everyone in the neighborhood knew about Bobby. Bobby, the basketball boy, they called him. Bobby wanted to go pro someday, so he was always out in the driveway shooting hoops. But one day, his mom came out and told him,
"Hey, your wife wants you to take out the trash?"
His mom was visiting, and Bobby was a grown man. He had kind of missed his window. Plus, no one had ever seen him actually make a basket. But on the other hand, Bobby had heard how Geico could save him money on car insurance, so he switched and saved. So it was all good.
Yeah, it's the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz, but we're not Dan Le Batard or Stugotz, and we don't have the shipping container with us either. Somebody on Twitter, Fitz, said, "You guys need to work with the shipping container. It's like you forget they're there when you host." And I'm like, that's because they're not there.
It's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair that you would think it seems like they're not here because they're not. It's just a regular old Spain and Fitz crew with a little outsider mic on the 1s and 2s today, giving you the AC/DC.
Can we go back to what we just heard about coffee and just at least quickly acknowledge how wrong that is? Like, iced coffee is an American treasure, and refusing to allow coffee to grow into be more than just hot coffee is just so get off my lawn guy. And it's like saying that once we finished with Cheerios, we should just stop working on new cereals. There are better cereals than Cheerios. There are better coffees than hot coffee. That's all I have to say. I just had to get that off my chest.
Let me give you some advice, Fitz.
Okay, yes.
I would, first of all, not respond to any rejoins from this show as if they are a real conversation by real people.
No, that's fair. That's
and
fair.
Secondly, do not try to rile up the Cody Army, the Greg Cody Army, because you will find yourself on the wrong side of a beaten. He is get off my lawn, and that is his brand. So
I was told not to mess with the Stugotz Army either. They've been very
nice. There's a lot of armies over there.
You know, there's
the
a lot of
Greg Cody Army is aged and not likely to be able to remove themselves from their veranda chairs in order to fight you, but they will be sending you dirty glances from the Senior Citizen Center.
Well, they probably don't have Twitter then, so I'm safe.
Very true. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. I'm Sarah Spain. He's Jason Fitz. You can usually hear us 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern every weeknight, Spain and Fitz. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. By the way, for those asking, we were talking about Conor McGregor losing it, and people reminded me that it wasn't just that Conor was mad about the idea that he'd be stripped of his title when a new fighter won this weekend, but also that Conor's team was cornered by the other fighter and threatened, and that's why he retaliated. I had seen both versions of the story. Neither had been confirmed by Conor because he's currently at the police station. So I was going with one, but I'm sure that the other has as much merit, if not more. Either way, Conor McGregor was throwing things at a bus.
Yeah, and I can't say this loudly, clearly enough. I don't care. Whatever your excuse excuses for Conor. At the point that he picks up the dolly and throws it at the bus, there's a like, get some control of yourself, man, moment there, and he didn't, which is why, I don't know, he's going to face charges.
Right, exactly. Anyway, thinking about Conor McGregor, and then I saw this story about Jared Leto. Yes, the Academy Award-winning actor and former star of My So-Called Life, which is who he will always be to me, was promoting his band and went around on a NASCAR ride with Tyler Reddick on a hot pink car that had his album name and everything painted on it. And he said for the entirety of the 200-mile-per-hour ride, he was screaming. Like full bore, screaming the whole time. And he said he wasn't sure whether it was joy or panic, but he was screaming. So it had me thinking, Fitz, of all the sports, which athlete is the least sound of mind in order to choose that sport? And I put up a poll, and I went with the obvious, which was, of course, the NASCAR driver, the X Games athlete, the MMA fighter, or other. Right now, MMA is blowing everyone away at 72%, X Games at 13%, NASCAR at 9%, and then among the others, people have mentioned ski jumping.
Ski jumping, I really think should have been on this list. As a guy that's afraid of heights, right? So not only are you jumping in the air and you have nothing, but then when you fall, there's a lot of outcomes and only one of them's good. Like, I don't understand where you're like, hey, I'm just going to jump off this ramp and just see where things go. Like, that's not real.
Yes, that is not surprisingly a high option there. The NFL. Someone asked how it's possible for me not to have included the NFL, which is fair.
But I'm such a no. I'm going to go ski jumping's way. You got to be way crazier to ski jump than.
Okay, how about this one? Bull riding.
Okay, bull riding is. I played a lot of rodeos in my life, Sarah, and every time I looked at them, I was like, "What are you doing?" I don't understand why you would possibly be like, "Hey, here's a good idea. I'm going to get on this massive animal that doesn't want me to be around it, and then just see where things go." Like, just see where things go should never be the end of a statement when you're putting your life at risk.
Well, and especially because the bull is not only unhappy that you are on it, but also because, as far as I can remember, they pinch the bull's testicles.
Yeah.
And that's how they get them to buck.
Uh-huh.
So, pretty sure that's why they're so mad at you.
And suddenly I'm like, and I don't really blame the bull all that much. Like,
right. Some people say it's completely harmless and painless, that they just have a flank strap that makes them want to buck, just uses a little pressure. I don't know if I buy that.
And let's be honest, who tested that and got feedback? Like, did they have a focus group of bulls that are like, you know what, it's really not all that bad? Like, was Ferdinand the bull back there, and he's like, guys, don't worry about it. It's all good.
It feels good. Just hugs them just right. Just right.
Oh, there's like a new underwear commercial in that for bulls.
Flank strap. That sounds like something you'd see at a S&M club. In fact, I bet you can order one at the loverslane.com.
Oh, my God. That's amazing.
Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz hosting today, filling in for the guys. I'm going to go with, I still think it's X Games. But so bull riding, here's the thing. You have to be at the whim of something that is not human, right? It has no control. It can't decide that it wants to play along. But you do have a variety of people that are out there trying to stop it from killing you. Right?
Right. Okay.
Whereas the NFL, the CTE that will lie dormant within you for years or start to grow within you for years before you find out, that's pretty bad. The X Games ones, though, I don't know. X Games and NASCAR, there's multiple incidents of deaths or paralyzings in both.
But what you're forgetting...
Is that a word, paralyzing?
It is for this. What you're forgetting, though, Sarah, in bull riding is that at best, if you win, it's because you managed to make it 8 seconds without getting thrown off. And when you get thrown off, you get thrown into a pile of dirt and manure. Like, there's no... And that's the win. So I don't get that one at all. I'm out on that one.
Yeah. Somebody said hockey's not getting the love. I mean, hockey is, yes, I realize that you're skating on knives, but you're fine. That doesn't make the cut. Sorry. Someone said pro wrestlers because you're trusting someone else with your health while they slam you through chairs and tables and other things. We're going to get into wrestling later in the show because Jeff Jarrett will be on. And I also am going to need you guys to convince me that it's cool. because I'm get off my lawn about wrestling. We'll get to that later, though. This was Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Coming up, we head to Augusta, catch up with ESPN's Tom Rinaldi. Is Tony Finau the next name in golf? Plus, does golf need a dominant player to catch the average fan? And will Rinaldi make us cry? It's next on the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz. Spain and Fitz filling in on ESPN Radio. Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz, Sarah Spain, and Jason Fitz filling in today. You can hear Spain and Fitz 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern every weeknight. Here's your SportsCenter update. The Cavs overcame a 16-point deficit in the final 6 minutes to beat the Wizards 119-115. Largest comeback in the final 6 minutes of LeBron James' career. Cleveland has a half-game lead over the Sixers in the race for the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. Jordan Spieth leads the Masters after shooting a 6-under 66 yesterday. Tony Finau and Matt Kuchar at 2 shots back. Tiger Woods trails by 7 strokes. He's at +1, tied for 29th. Tiger begins his second round at 1:27 Eastern today. And finally, Okaloosa County, Florida, reporting that a Florida family found a new way to carpool when their car ended up accidentally rolling into a swimming pool. The sheriff's official said in a Facebook post that a woman thought she put her car in park when she ran back into her apartment to grab some money, but the blue car with her husband and daughter inside crashed through a gate and ended up in a swimming pool. Deputies responded to a car in pool call and said everyone was okay, but the car had to be pulled from the bottom of the pool. Let's go to the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, where ESPN's Tom Rinaldi joins us. Tom, before we get started on any of the actual golfing, do you need to tell us how inexpensive any of the food is at Augusta? Because that seems to be the number one thing for reporters to report from Augusta.
Negative. I'm not going to give you any sort of culinary report. I wouldn't stoop that low, sir. I know you want to get to the heart of matters, so let's not traffic in such trivialities.
Wait, nobody's going to give me an update on if the pimento's actually good? This is it. I don't know, Tom. I mean, I feel disappointed now.
I am sorry that the last thing I mean to do is disappoint you from the start right here, but please come on up. Would you like to text me the address? I'll buy you a whole bunch of them. I guarantee they have enough preservatives in them to last into next year's Masters, and we'll ship right out to you.
Well, let's start with, we're going to be talking about this a little later. You know, golf is a pack of white dudes that are sort of indistinguishable from each other right now. And then onto the scene steps just the man we need in case Tiger can't get it done. Tony Finau, the Tongan Samoan guy who popped his own ankle back in and sits in second. What did he do right yesterday other than take a bunch of horse tranquilizers to get himself back out there?
Well, he made a couple of points which I thought were interesting, and I think we often hear struck in other sports, right? To beware of, quote unquote, the wounded competitor, meaning that to take your mind off of any pressure, the stakes, you're just going shot to shot to try to manage your injury. And that's essentially what Finau said he did yesterday. He wasn't certain when he got up in the morning, pretty much unable to walk, that he'd even be able to play in his very first Masters. You know, speaking to his dad after the round yesterday, his dad was in tears about what it meant to him, to the family line, to have his son play in this event, and then to have him finish in second place after round one. He really did two things. He focused just shot to shot, which may sound cliched, but when you have to focus that hard, simply be able to know that I'm going to be able to walk and get up and down through the undulations of the course. And number two, nobody putted better than Tony Finau did yesterday.
Talking to Tom Rinaldi on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. How sustainable is it with that type of injury to think that he can do it for days on end?
Well, our Marty Smith spoke to him this morning and was on SportsCenter to say that he felt better today than he did a day ago. Now, I don't know that he felt better after an opening bogey at 1. He's at 3 under right now and 3 shots back of the leader, Spieth. But he proclaimed himself to be physically sound. Whether the putter remains as hot, we'll see. But he is in the right wave, guys. There was a substantial difference in the scoring between the afternoon wave yesterday and the morning wave. We'll see if that continues to serve out and that division remains.
Jordan Spieth, the leader right now. I saw a tweet from Michael Eaves last night that being in that top position at the end of the first round, not always a good omen for those in contention. I think only 2 in the last 33 years have won it if they've had at least a share of the first round lead. What do you make of Jordan Spieth and where he sits now heading into today?
we got to get on Michael Leeds, perhaps, for the lack of context in the tweet. That's the problem with the social media guys. One of those two, his name is Jordan Spieth. When he led wire to wire here and he won. So the fact
I think
that
Eves included that. It was Spieth and Rose, I think, right? Spieth
Look
and
at
Rose.
You rushing to the defense of our man. We appreciate that.
Yes.
But the fact is that while you may not want to have the lead, he's a guy who's proven that he can play with the lead. He's played 17 rounds here as a pro. He's been either on a lead or having a share of it 9 of those 17. So it's a very familiar position for Spieth. And he's somebody that, again, we'll have to see if the putter, which has been giving him such troubles, guys, is as solid as it was yesterday for him again today. But if we see something sub-70 again from him, he could begin to get tough to catch.
So, Tom, with that being said, when you look at the field of guys that are in contention, who do you think's best suited to make adjustments and have a better round today?
Well, Rory McIlroy is a guy who has had one bad round to take him out of things. This is his 4th time trying to earn the career Grand Slam. He was very, very pleased with how he played yesterday, shooting an opening round 69. It's the first time he broke 70 since all the way back in 2011 when he had the 54-hole lead and famously shot 80 to fall out of contention. Most guys, if you walk up and down the practice ground, will tell you the two players, if they're at their very best, striking their very highest note, 2 players separate themselves from anyone else on tour, Rory McIlroy and Dustin Johnson. Dustin Johnson won over yesterday, but Rory in the red and not too far back, he'd be the guy to watch for.
Talking to Tom Rinaldi on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Can we all give ourselves a hand for making it through all of that conversation without mentioning Tiger yet? A golf clap, maybe. A golf clap. So let's get to Tiger. We asked yesterday, what's success for Tiger at this tournament? A win doesn't seem likely. The projections that he would win seemed a little bit hasty. Maybe just the excitement of him completing an entire 2 tournaments without pulling out due to injury had us thinking a little ahead of ourselves. What would you consider a success for him?
I think yesterday was a successful round because it certainly could have gotten away from him, Sarah. He was in a precarious spot by the time he got to 12 where he could have carded a 75 or worse and clearly been out. 7 shots back. Is it doable? He's proven that it's doable. He's come back from 7 shots back after the first round to win. But you can also make the case that was at a different time in his life with a different back, with a different physical soundness to his game. He's certainly not out of it by any stretch, but he would absolutely have to begin to go low today, and that may be difficult, again, being on the wrong side of the morning-afternoon wave. He's got one of the final tee times today when likely the greens will be quicker than they are this morning. Success, Sarah, I think would be making the cut, and if he found a way to get into any form of contention over the weekend. But the fact is that if you go back and look at all the uncertainties following spinal fusion surgery, guys, if you went back and said Tiger Woods is going to be playing in the Masters and is going to carry in a streak of 10 consecutive rounds at par or better, I think you'd be shocked if we'd said that in January. I know he's proclaimed the betting favorite, etc. We certainly wouldn't count him out, but he's got a lot of work to do. Success to me is getting through, and if there's any way to vaguely get in contention, to me that's a clear success. Not to him, but I think to me.
Rinaldi, 30 seconds or less. I don't know the exact rules of the Masters or of golf tournaments in general, but if you're Sergio Garcia and you hit 2 in the water again, are you allowed to just walk off and no one will judge you?
Well, you can withdraw.
I think it should be allowed.
I certainly think that you will be judged, but that is the case for anyone that steps in the arena. Sarah, you know that. We're all to be judged.
No, I want everybody to be like, we get it, dude.
Yeah,
we get
7
it, man.
water balls in the drink, and they're just like, we'll walk you out. We'll walk you out. Hey, thanks for the time, Tom. Really appreciate it.
Okay, guys, please text the address, egg salad, pimento, on the way.
Not even kidding. It's on the way. Thanks, Tom.
Bye-bye.
The great Tom Rinaldi joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Coming up, a storybook farewell in hockey and sending fish in the mail. next on the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz. Spain and Fitz with you today on ESPN Radio. It's the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz hosting today. You can hear Spain and Fitz 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern every weeknight. Surprise a friend or loved one today with a bouquet from 1-800-Flowers.com. When you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen absolutely free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. So we mentioned the Masters after the first round. Jordan Spieth is your leader. He shot a 66 for a 6 under. Matt Kuchar in second at -4. A handful of guys at -3, including Henrik Stenson and Tony Finau. Rory McIlroy also in that pack. Phil Mickelson among the fellas at -2, tied for 10th. And then all the way down around 27th is Tiger Woods, who shot a +1 yesterday. Keep you updated on the Masters as round 2 gets going today. But a little hockey talk, which happens rarely on these around these parts. Although we occasionally get a hockey guy who talks far away from the microphone, or Roy, America's top black hockey expert. We also have death metal hockey guy. None of those people will be appearing. We instead have Predators' #1 fan, guy whose voice cracks like he's going through puberty, Jason Fitz.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel so
it's a whole new
accomplished.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank my life coach.
Before we get to you and your brethren, let's get to the Sedin twins. 2 guys that I've talked smack about for the majority of their careers solely because I don't like some of the punk ways that they interact and their team interacted with my team. Good news is we mostly came out on top. And by we, I mean the Blackhawks. But last night, I had to put aside my petty and immature feelings toward the Sedin twins and acknowledge what was a very, very, very cool final home game for them. Their last time playing in Vancouver at the end of 18-year certain Hall of Fame careers. Some really cool moments, Fitz. So they're number 22 and number 33. And at 2:33 of overtime, which would also be 22:33 of the third period if it just kept going, Daniel scored on a pass from Sedin, 22-23, 33 seconds in. And earlier in the game, in period 2, 33 seconds, same thing. Daniel scoring off Henrik. Pretty awesome moment. And I know those little numbers are just, coincidental. It's not a message from a higher power, but you love when it works out that way on their way out.
I don't know what you're talking about. God's obviously a hockey fan. I mean, that's what we learned last night. Like, God was out doing some runs on the ice and was like, you know what? I think we should make this happen. It's a really crazy, cool, fate-like moment, and cool for them to get to celebrate that in such a weird, like, it almost gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit, but it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if God was a Canucks fan, they would have a Stanley Cup.
No, he's just a hockey fan. So he appreciates hockey.
Cup.
But even God's like, not
much.
You, Vancouver, not you.
But yeah, very cool finish for the 37-year-olds, the identical twins. They're a little bit like the creepy twins from The Shining that are in the hallway.
Yeah.
That's always the vibe they've given me, but very good at hocky. Excellent.
Not in a dress
hockey
so
players.
much, but the same.
Yeah, exactly.
You turn the hall, you see him there, you're like, you know what, I'll just take a different hallway. It's fine. There's many hallways here.
Yes. But very cool moment for them and memories for everybody there and for them. And I am a total sucker for stories of excellent players who go out on top. Like, there's something very magical about, and in fact, I don't think they should go on and play any away games. I think that should be it.
Oh, that would be a nice way to end that. I wouldn't have a hard time with that. Like, what if a player at the end was like, you know what, that's such a perfect moment. I'm done. I'm out right now.
Just puck drop, I guess, is what it would be called instead of a mic drop.
Yeah, I'm just going to drop it and sit on the bench and say, hey, you guys have at it. We're done. That was too perfect a moment to try anything else.
Yeah, especially when you've won 31 games on the season and you're not headed to the postseason. You might as well go out on that. Yeah, I mean, just a suggestion.
You go out and take your bow, but you're still in the, I mean, it's got to, that this season is hurt for them, I'm sure.
Yeah. Sure has. Let's talk about your team, the Predators. Another team that I have had some less than friendly words for. I've always rooted for them because I love Nashville as a place, and also because it's really fun to go down to Blackhawks games in Nashville. But they stopped playing the national anthem because Blackhawks fans brought our traditions to your stadium, and they were so sick of realizing that we had taken over that they started only playing God Bless America instead of the national anthem when we were in town, which was kind of like a punk move, right? Like, stand up and own it. But your team succeeding far more than mine this season.
Yeah, my team with now, that was a different era of Preds hockey. Let's remember 100 straight sellouts for Bridgestone Arena.
Yes, now that you've made it impossible for people from other places to buy tickets by literally requiring an in-state address, you guys are doing a great job of
sold out 100 straight games, though. Doesn't matter how we got there. Sold out 100 straight games.
There you go. Let's talk about Briley Meeks. She's a 25-year-old Preds fan. She spent almost $150 to mail a dead catfish to the NHL office in Toronto because she didn't like a ruling on goalie interference on Tuesday night. Come get your mans. Your womans.
This is spectacular. I love everything about this. It's high time. The Preds fans have felt like they've been getting a swift kick in the no-no places from the NHL for a long time. It was a terrible call. I don't think there's some great conspiracy theory against the Preds by the NHL. I want to say that clearly. It was a terrible call, though, and I love this precedent. Preds fans everywhere I say, just start loading the league office up. If you want to be hated, go for it. Go all in on the hate. Just start sending them catfish left and right. I'm all in on it.
This is not the first catfish-related incident for the Preds. Catfish Jake Waddell, we all remember hearing about him. He traveled to Pittsburgh and smuggled a catfish in his pants and threw it on the ice right before the Cup final. Game one against
a lot of catfish in the pants there, but I will congratulate the Preds. First ever President's Trophy, best record in the NHL this year. Woo!
Well, if you heard me talking about the Canucks earlier, you'll understand how completely meaningless that is when it comes to actual success. Looking great at your big event is easy with thebblacktux.com. To score $20 off your purchase, visit thebblacktux.com/Dan. Straight ahead, white guys. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
And now some words from our sponsor that you don't understand and I can't pronounce. Flap, pustule, jowls, nugget, gurgle, smear, curd, bulbous, bulbous, bulbous. What is it?
It's bulbous.
Bulbous. Tender, dongle, pork, and moist. Whether you're a construction worker, warehouse worker, or, frankly, a radio host, if you hear certain words on the job site, work can be uncomfortable. So, at least get work gear that's comfortable. Timberland Pro work shirts, pants, and boots, head to toe. Timberland Pro, not uncomfortable.
Winning at sports and at sports broadcasting means changing things up.
Just like La Quinta Inns and Suites is changing up their look.
A renovated lobby that's so contemporary it even makes Goluk look cool.
Yes, it does. And a totally updated fitness center that even has Wingo feeling like a workout.
I'm ripped. Plus plenty of comfortable spaces to hang out.
Yep, this La Quinta look definitely has a vibe of victory.
So you can just relax, refresh, and get ready for your next big meeting.
Prepare to win at business with La Quinta Inns and Suites.
Book now at LQ.com.
It's the Dan Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz hosting today. Spain and Fitz on regularly 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio weeknights. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests are on the show. Pennzoil Performance Line. We'll talk to Jeff Jarrett a little later in the show about his Hall of Fame entry and WrestleMania this weekend. But now, we're going to talk about white guys. That's right. We're talking golf. And I will say that I will represent the casual golf fan. Because I do. I like watching golf, but I usually only like watching it on Sunday when I hear that something cool is going down. That usually used to be, hey, everybody, Tiger Woods is doing his Tiger Woods thing. Click on over. So I'm sitting at home. I flip over. I watch Tiger in his red and black doing his thing. And then I've gotten into Jordan Spieth. Once I saw him doing some chest bumps, bringing a little energy, I was like, all right, I like this guy. I'll watch this guy. So I'm a casual fan. I don't want to sit and watch all rounds of golf. I don't get the chills when I hear the Masters music. But I'm a casual fan. So I think I can safely say that I represent a handful of other casual golf fans who have wanted to be interested and involved in the sport after Tiger's departure, but have had a little trouble because there isn't a guy who can separate himself from the pack. At one point, I thought it was Rory McIlroy. He was good at golf. He got a cool accent. He's from a different country. And he was dating a really successful tennis player, which made for a cute story. two top professional athletes doing their thing. But other than Rory, who we'll remove from this white guy's bunch of dudes, thank you, because he's from a different country, let's go with what the U.S. has offered up as a possible replacement for Tiger. Dustin Johnson, Justin Thomas, which, by the way, those names sound almost exactly the same. Dustin Johnson, Justin Thomas, almost exactly the same. Jordan Spieth, Justin Rose. Oh, I'm sorry, another Justin. Great. Oh, he's from England. Let's just stick with the U.S. guys. Spieth, Thomas, Johnson. We'll throw Ricky Fowler in there, although Ricky Fowler separates himself from the pack by virtue of his hair and his clothes, right? He gives himself a little bit of distance because he's a little bit kookier than the rest. He looks like he should be at the X Games or selling weed at Huntington Beach.
Well, we don't know what he does on his weekends.
He might. That might be what he does in his free time. But these are a bunch of dudes that kind of look the same. They're not on a team, so you don't identify them with a jersey or a logo. They show up and they wear golf clothes, which all look fairly similar, although Ricky, like I said, brings a little punch to the outfits. They wear golf clothes. They're not on a team. They're middle-sized white dudes. Thank you. And they don't ever win in a way that is so dominant that the conversation surrounds only them for long enough to think of them as separate from the pack. And Tiger Woods was as successful as he was, not just because he dominated play and he was good enough and at the top long enough for us to know that he was above and beyond everyone else, but because he looked different, because he came from a different background, because he was a story from a young age when he's 4 years old, going on shows, hitting golf balls. He was completely different. And yes, a lot of that was his race, and a lot of that was the conversations we had about his race and the new era and generation of golf fans he was creating by being this guy that stood out from the pack. I think part of the problem, Fitz, with golf now is we are searching so hard for the next Tiger, not just because we want someone to be as dominant as Tiger was golf-wise, but because we can't distinguish. Like, Phil Mickelson is separate from the pack. Lefty, he's older. He's got a different, style. And he's got enough of a storyline going head-to-head with Tiger and some of the choking and whatever that we kind of view him differently. But all these young guys that we keep trying to get to replace Tiger, what would they need to do to separate themselves from the pack? I would argue win 5 in a row and have a sex scandal.
The sex scandal is the key. I mean,
it's necessary.
To your point, it's funny, as you were listing names, you went U.S. golfers because you were being kind. But the fact is, when I'm watching on the broadcast, some guy just missed a putt. That's all I can tell you, because they're all wearing the same pants. They all got the hat held down too far. And look, what they're missing, what most of them are missing, is something that makes them unique and distinct from the bar, sitting there. And this isn't just as simple as the fact that, Tiger obviously is black. It's not as simple as that. It comes down to more than that. His dominance was part of it, but his approach was different. The way he treated the game seemed different. The way he reacted to his shots was memorable. Everything about him was distinct in his key moments. And so, I'll be the first to admit, I'm less than you are in the fandom range. I walk into the bar during the Masters weekend and I see golf is on. I roll my eyes and I'm like, all right, I guess we're watching some golf. That's what's going on here. So it's not something that draws me in, but it's hard for me to watch it and differentiate from these guys because you don't see enough of their personality on the course. You don't get to find out enough about them in the process. All you do is see a bunch of guys that looked, act, and sort of dress similarly doing the same thing. Good luck differentiating. One of them's going to have to win for a long time, and then they're going to, in addition to that, have to have some sort of a crossover celebrity appeal moment.
Right. They need to bone a Perkins waitress.
But, well, above and beyond that, I would say this. Think about this. You're not a big country music fan, right? And that's I totally get that because you don't listen to a lot of country. So if I played you a bunch of country music, most of it wouldn't separate, right? You'd be like, that band sounds like that band sounds like that band. They all sound the same, right? It's hard to differentiate. You don't differentiate until you cross over, in most of the time, to another genre, whether it's like you crossed over because you did a duet with a pop artist, whatever it is. Like, suddenly more audience finds out about you. They get to know your story more. Now you relate more. All of a sudden, you resonate more. That's what golf has to find a way to do.
Yeah, that Brad Paisley, LL Cool J, Accidental Racist song, that was really when he reached the pinnacle of fame.
Well...
was the worst thing I've ever.
While I am not a fan of that
so
song,
racist. How do you name a song "Accidental Racist" and have it actually be racist?
Well, that was not his shining moment. Brad's a good example. Like you wouldn't know Brad Paisley other than that. Like if
No, I know him because he's married to the chick from the wedding movie with Steve Martin.
Right, he's married to an actress. So like that's the piece of Brad Paisley. The same with Keith Urban. Like, well, he married Nicole Kidman. All of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, I get Keith Urban.
Well, that's why Rory McIlroy broke away from the pack, because he was dating Caroline Wozniacki, and I was like, oh, cool, like tennis, golf match, that's really cute. And then he has an accent.
I think that there's a point where Rory would need to like date, I don't know, Ariana Grande. I'm just picking random female names out of a hat. He needs to have some sort of a crossover moment with somebody completely not in another niche sport. It takes something like that for us to all sort of dive in and say, okay, now I want to get to know that person. And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm not saying that that's fair. That's just the way it is. It's hard for these guys to separate when so many of them look, act, and feel the same on TV when you watch their game.
Okay, so what is Dustin Johnson doing wrong? Because right now he is ranked number 1 in the sport. He is dating or engaged to Wayne Gretzky's daughter, who is not famous in her own right, but is like an Instagram kind of fame. And he has been suspended for cocaine use. I think he's doing everything right.
Yeah, but still, if Dustin Johnson were chasing me through the parking lot with a golf club saying, give me back my cocaine, I wouldn't know who he was.
Get away from me, Justin Thomas.
Justin Johnson Thomason.
Rose? Spieth? Nah, I mean, okay, so this is where our boy, my new favorite golfer, Tony Finau, comes in. He's my favorite golfer because he literally popped his ankle out, popped it back in after hitting a hole-in-one, and is currently in second at the Masters in his first attempt. And this guy is just what we're looking for. He's not a white dude. That's a great start. Great start. From far away, you might think he's Tiger Woods. Also a great start, right? Hey, Tiger's back. Not close enough. And he's Tongan and Samoan. First ever to play on the PGA Tour of that ancestry. That's fantastic, right? We love firsts. This guy used to do fire juggling at luau's with his sister to raise money as a kid. Awesome. Cool story, bro. Right? Like, I'm all in.
No, I'm all in on this, too. I wish he was like, I'm used to NFL Samoans that are like big, huge guys, you know? So I kind of wish he looked like that so he would come in and just crush the ball.
That guy would separate from the pack.
That guy would sell so much merch.
I would love to see, like the John Daly body type, but in a Samoan.
I mean, that's what I'm looking for in separation. Like, I want somebody that looks a little and might have a little bit of crazy eye, like somebody that looks like they might just be a little bit right on the line of you don't want to mess with them. That would also be nice in golf too. So,
I love this.
Yeah.
All right, he's also the cousin of Jabari Parker.
No way.
NBA player. Yeah.
See?
And he had multiple college scholarship offers in basketball. He also used to play on the NGA Hooters tour, which I've never heard of, and I'm deeply concerned about the gallery at that tourney. But this guy, this Tony Finau, he could be just what we need, Fitz.
Finau could be the phenom we need.
Wow, look at you. You nailed it. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch to Progressive can save an average of $620. Coming up, Kevin Durant, usually throwing shade at the media, but now slinging shade at his coach, Steve Kerr. You'll find out why next. Spain and Fitz in for the Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
Let me tell you about the Capital One Saver Card. It's the next big thing in food. With the Capital One Saver Card, you can make every meal more rewarding. Earn unlimited 3% cash back on dining, 2% on groceries, and 1% on everything else. Your rewards don't expire for the life of the account, and you can redeem cash back for any amount. Capital One, what's in your wallet? Credit approval required. Capital One Bank, USA, N.A.
And time for your Sports Center update. presumably presented by Barbasol. Jordan Spieth leads the Masters after shooting a 6 under 68 yesterday. Matt Kuchar alone in second, 2 shots back at -4. Tiger Woods trails by 7 strokes at +1, tied for 29th. Tiger begins his second round at 1:27 Eastern today. UFC star Conor McGregor charged by New York police with 3 counts of misdemeanor assault and a count of felony criminal mischief after turning himself into police following an incident Thursday in Brooklyn. That according to the NYC Police Department. Finally, in Quebec, police appealed to the public Thursday to help them find thieves who recently made off with nearly 20,000 cases of beer, dried beef, and Jack Link's brand pepperoni. The goods, which police said were worth about $500,000, were stolen March 12th, and police say they disabled the alarm system, broke into the warehouse, and there was some coming back and forth during the night, so they came more than once, he said in a phone interview about pepperoni. The trucks were later found empty in Montreal.
Next, you're holding up the line, ma'am.
What did you say?
You're next in line for the water slide, ma'am. Feet forward and enjoy the ride.
Okay, dearie, this does look fun. Whee! You melted me. I've melted.
The Wicked Witch of the West on a water slide? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
See what you've done. Oh!
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
It is Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. But the guys are not here. The shipping container is not here. We are not recording this from a studio overlooking South Beach.
That is the darn truth right there.
Please continue to listen, though. By all means, don't change the channel. Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz hosting today. Spain and Fitz regularly 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio. You can catch up on all the podcasts if you aren't on board yet. Tune in tomorrow night as the Rockets host the Thunder, presented by Firestone Complete Auto Care. Coverage begins at 8 p.m. Eastern on most ESPN radio stations. So we got a theme that has been prevalent of late, which is Steve Kerr having trouble motivating his team and Kevin Durant complaining. It's just Durant's complaining about something different this time. Here's what Steve Kerr said after his Warriors lost to the Pacers last night.
In general, it's hard to win an NBA game if you don't put forth that all. I'm embarrassed. I mean, I know that this game doesn't mean anything in the seeding. The playoffs start next week. It's an embarrassing effort, pathetic effort.
How much sense they play in terms of the playoff series?
Well, maybe they are. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe the game doesn't matter, so we'll try next week. So hopefully we will.
Yeah, it's hard to hear there, but his basic premise was caring in general was the main problem, which was something he said. And it's hard when you don't put forth any effort at all. The Pacers, by the way, Fitz, have swept the season series with the Warriors. The only team in NBA history to sweep a Steve Kerr coached squad. Not a stat that probably Steve Kerr wanted to add to the old resume. And even though the Pacers are a fine team who have not gotten nearly enough attention and credit this year, you would not expect them to be sweeping the Warriors, even though their last matchup involved a whole bunch of injured players out. This one didn't. Steph Curry, the only main guy who wasn't available. And I don't blame Steve Kerr for being frustrated.
Yeah, and let's be clear, this wasn't just win, it was a butt whooping. I mean, Golden State was never in this game. They got thrashed. There's no two ways to spin that. And so they got thrashed by a lesser team, which speaks to Kerr saying, hey, there's an indifference problem. It's interesting to me, though, that Kerr has been trying to find different ways over the last half of the season to sort of poke the belly of the beast of this team. And I don't know if it's working. Like, do you really feel like we've seen Golden State play nearly to their capability for most of the second half of the season? I feel like they've been coasting for a very long time. We just presume, because they've done it in the past and because they're as talented as they are, that the playoffs are going to come and it's going to be fine. But I understand Kerr's frustration a week before the playoffs when you see your team just come out and lay that sort of a dud.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that Steve Kerr literally sat down, handed over his clipboard to his players, and said, coach yourselves. And a lot of people criticized it. I applauded it because it is incredibly difficult to do his job. And as much as you want to argue that a dog in a button-down could coach the Warriors. You are managing a bunch of egos. You are managing players. Steph Curry's a great example, who a couple years ago, when Durant wasn't on the team and when he was amazing people with his essentially half-court shots on the regular, people were arguing, is he overtaken LeBron James as the best player in the league? Is he the most marketable and profitable and blah, blah, blah? And then he takes a step back in order to facilitate a better team dynamic by allowing Durant in and becoming, he's still obviously an incredible scoring threat, but a facilitator in a lot of ways, really makes that team run. And allowing a bunch of guys to want to do that and leading them through that is a huge deal and something that Steve Kerr has done incredibly well. This season, as we're entering perhaps the fourth straight year of the Warriors getting to the finals and probably facing the same team, you're trying to find new ways to stick a poke in their butt and say, hey, come on, show up for this. And when you look at the fact that this game means nothing to the seeding, it's not that hard to understand why they'd be disengaged, but it's a pathetic effort, and it can be an issue when you're very close to the playoffs starting to then believe that you can just flip the switch.
I would have less of an issue with the entire thing if Durant, in response, had come back and said, man, we really do need to pick it up. But as usual this year, Kevin Durant did not respond that way. His quote afterwards said, I thought we cared. Tonight we cared. Last few games we cared. They played better basketball than us. They came out with a better strategy. They were more aggressive than us. That is a level of shade in response in the process. A, what do you win by not just saying, man, we just got beat by 20, so obviously the effort wasn't there. You win nothing. But B, the fact that he came out and said, no, we cared. It's just they had a better strategy. It feels like he's sort of smacking in the face of exactly, like he's saying they're not the problem. Kerr's the problem in that small subtweeted sort of way. There's a communication issue somewhere in this process, and it's all fixed by winning. That will fix all of this. But if things don't go well for Golden State, I scratch my head continually at the way these things happen.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot. Kevin Durant is in some ways a little bit like Kawhi Leonard in that when he was in Oklahoma City, we didn't know that much about him. He wasn't coming out and showing a ton of personality. We filled in the blanks with what we believed was who he was. And we do that with Kawhi Leonard too, right? He's quiet, so he must just be a good guy who buys in, works hard, and shows up and does whatever the coach asks. Well, now we're not so sure about either of them. And a lot has happened with Kevin Durant over the course of this season. We realize that he is much more sensitive than we thought. The accusations of being a cupcake and being soft and jumping on a bandwagon have really affected him. We've seen that in his Twitter activity. We've seen that in his interactions with media. He doesn't like being criticized. And I don't want to say too much about what this means. I don't think Steve Kerr is the guy who's going to get rattled by one of his players talking back or potentially hinting at it being Kerr's fault, right? When he says that they've got a better strategy, that's on the coaching staff. So the fact that he's kind of throwing his coach under the bus, I don't think Steve Kerr is going to let it get to him. But you never want to underestimate those little moments within a team like that.
Oh, absolutely. It still feels to me a little like a marriage. Like it's a long process trying to get these guys to come through and get everybody on the same page. I agree with you. Kerr's not going to suddenly flip out from it. It still just rubs me the wrong way to see Durant handle the criticism that way.
Absolutely. Coming up, there will be plenty to watch in the upcoming NBA playoffs, but there are a few big things that are going to be missing. We'll tell you what they are next. It's the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio. Spain and Fitz filling in. I mean, if we're going to play any Le Batard guest rapping, I think I'm the first choice, not Mina. I think we all know the commish really is the one who throws it down.
Have we not organized some sort of a rap battle between the two of you?
It should happen. Prim and I, back in the days of Spain and Prim, had an epic rap battle, but I have not yet battled Mina. I would like to battle Mina in person because I would like to use my physical prowess to overpower her. I would like to scare her purely by virtue of my height.
Can I build like some killer beats for you to spit your flow over?
Yeah, that's going to be my biggest help is that I've got you on my side.
Yeah, but I didn't tell you I'm going to wear a tracksuit, hat sideways,
yes.
Oh yeah, come running out with the the laptop, a laptop obviously, but wear it around my neck and then go wicka 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 before I hit the button.
No. I don't want that. I want the.
No, I don't want that.
No.
To be clear.
No, you were almost there though. I want you to be Bill Hader in the "What Up with That" sketch that wears the tracksuit and dances in the background. Ooh, Ooh-wee, what up with that? And then we can bump Lindsey Buckingham.
Every time.
But I'm gonna need you to wear that red tracksuit and do the very slow-mo running man.
I'm all in on this.
That's what I need from you. Look out, Mina. It's Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz hosting today the Dan Levitard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. We're brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. So I saw an interesting stat about the NBA playoffs. It has been since at least the early 70s, since Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York are not in the playoffs. And usually on most radio gas bag segments, the conversation that would result from hearing that stat would be, is this good or bad for the NBA? Can the NBA survive without the three biggest markets? But I think we all know that that's not how it works anymore. We've had a lot of conversations when talking about free agent movement about how it doesn't matter as much anymore what market you go to. That if you are a big enough star, you can be in OKC. You can be a Golden State, up in the Bay Area. You can be in Milwaukee. If you're a big enough star, you can be anywhere, and the eyeballs will come to you, the sponsorship dollars will come to you. But in some ways, Fitz, does that create a new issue where the star is bigger than the city? And if there is no star, then does the city suffer? What do we care about more? Just where the stars are and going to where the stars are? Or do we care about the health of franchises in various places? Is this a good thing that it creates a bit more parity so you don't have everyone needing to go to those places? Or do we still struggle sometimes with stars in smaller markets not getting what they deserve?
I think it's an interesting question because in my mind it gives random cities an opportunity to be really relevant in the NBA. So for example, obviously it's been a very long time since the Timberwolves made the playoffs, but the fact that they have some star power with the Timberwolves is part of why people will watch them in the playoffs. And then you look, an even better example is how many people are really clamoring over themselves to watch the Milwaukee Bucks in general. But Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks, they will watch. So it allows teams like that to sort of pop up and remind us why they're relevant and they have great franchises and you can watch it. But is it really about the franchise? No, it's all about Giannis. And if Giannis chooses to take his talent somewhere else at some point, we will forget about Milwaukee. So it's like you're trading off this short-term relevance with no long-term gain.
Right, because we still talk about the Lakers and the Knicks and the Bulls. Not as much the Bulls, especially lately. But you talk about those teams enough solely based on the idea of them. The Bulls, I think, have managed to very definitively prove that they are no longer the Bulls of the Jordan era, right? Nobody is forgetting that the last stretch since 98 has been pretty ugly, other than a brief couple years with Derrick Rose healthy. But the Lakers and the Knicks seem to be able, the Knicks specifically, the Lakers, it's not been that long since the Kobe years, but the Knicks have been terrible for a while, and yet we still sort of talk about them and treat them as if they are a pillar franchise in the NBA. And they're not. They're not even close.
I'm going to ask you a really deep question, okay?
Can't wait.
Which is not really usually my MO, but we're going to go deep here. Given the way the world has changed in the last 10, 15 years, and given the impact that social media has in the way people sort of recency bias that we talk about all the time and the way people absorb data, do you think history is no longer as relevant in general? Like you mentioned the Bulls, and obviously the Bulls are the Bulls, the Lakers are the Lakers, the Knicks are the Knicks. But in the world we live in today, I'm not sure that the next growing generation really cares about anything that happened for those teams during that time. It's interesting to see how they'll become fans of in the future, because I don't think history really matters to the same level.
Do you think it doesn't matter because there's so much content now that you don't need to also engage with content that's historical?
I think that's part of it, yeah.
Do you think it's technology that grainy old footage that can't match up to today's isn't as interesting for people to watch?
I also think there's just a level of, like, we live in such a quick reactionary society where, hey, something was on Twitter and now we all have to talk about it. And I don't just mean media, I mean everybody. I mean water cooler talk is so rarely actually supported by history and fact. It's just immediate reaction. So when people think, hey, I'm a Bulls fan, in the next generation? Is it going to have anything to do with what the Bulls have ever been or what the Lakers have ever been or what these historic franchises have ever been? Or is it just about, I'm a fan of whatever's good right now, which changes the way we perceive all of this? Like, if we're not worried about history and how it remembers most of these teams or these cities, then it certainly becomes all about the individual players and how they're remembered.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read I think it was a New York Times story that basically talked about how because of all of the content that's out there, people feel like they need to be able to comment on everything. So even if speaking of Mina, like Mina's a great example. Mina would talk about how she literally used to go to the library and read the transcripts of certain shows that she didn't watch so that she could have conversations about them. She'll go and read the Wikipedia pages of movies so that if they come up, she can comment on it even if she didn't see it. Okay, Mina's a weirdo. We can all accept that.
Right.
But the larger point, specifically now, when there is so much content, is that there are people who will read a couple Game of Thrones stories, not have seen Game of Thrones, and jump in a conversation about how much incest there is on the show, or whether there's too many, like, rape scenes in the show. There's people that will have conversations about series or movies or books that they've never read because they've seen enough little moments on social media or in articles that they want to be a part of the conversation. And it didn't used to be that way. It used to be that there was such a small amount out there to consume that everyone had so many shared moments of consumption. And instead, nobody's watching the same things. There's a very few things that could push past the giant mass of options that people can share them. And sports is one of those things. And that's why I think, because we are still all gathering to watch sports and we are still sharing those moments, the near history will always be relevant, particularly depending on what generation you are. But the far history may not, because people have so much to consume that they aren't bored anymore. No one's like, I'm going to put in my old VHS of the Lakers beating the whatever, but because now you can grab a couple clips off YouTube, which helps. But I think you might be onto something in that the current generation doesn't need to go seeking out historical entertainment consumption. There's too much now. They're not that interested.
Without throwing any of my friends or friends under buses, I was recently recounting a couple of conversations with some people, and one was about the yodeling kid. And I had not seen the yodeling kid videos in Walmart, and everybody was like, oh my God, you haven't seen the yodeling kid videos. So I was retelling that story. And every time I tell that, people are like, how have you not seen the yodeling kid videos? But I was also recounting a different conversation, and I brought up Monica Lewinsky, and the room had no idea who I was talking about. And so I look at it and I'm like, I just wonder if there's less of a presence to look back and figure out how that makes you to react to whatever you're seeing today, whether it's sports or whether it's the world.
Agreed. I agree. Also, did you see that Jordan Peele is going to do a Monica or a Lorena Bobbitt piece?
Wow.
Throw that name out. See how many people remember Lorena Bobbitt.
Now that I've shuddered.
If you heard that and you're a man and you didn't shudder, Google it. Google it. By the way, it was Jason Sudeikis in the tracksuit. Thank you to everybody who corrected me. Bill Hader was Lindsey Buckingham, of course, and Jason Sudeikis was in the running suit. My apologies for ruining the show. Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz filling in for Dan Le Batard and Stugotz. Coming up, Conor McGregor may not be able to mend his relationship with the UFC this time. We'll give you the latest details on that. Plus, there's a hotel that's mending fences with a man that they banned over 18 years ago. You'll hear that story next. Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz. Spain and Fitz filling in on ESPN Radio. And now your SportsCenter update. Let's take a look at the Masters leaderboard. Matt Kuchar and Jordan Spieth tied for the lead at -4. Phil Mickelson, Rory McIlroy, Rafa Cabrera Bello, Adam Hadwin, Charlie Hoffman, Patrick Reed, and Henrik Stenson all tied for third at -3. Our boy, our new favorite golfer, Tony Finau, at 2 under, tied for 10th with a couple guys, including Zach Johnson. Adrian Beltre now sits alone atop the Latin American hit list. The Rangers' third baseman broke a tie with Hall of Famer Rod Carew with his 3,054th career hit. The only foreign-born player with more career hits than Beltre in MLB history is the Mariners' Ichiro Suzuki, who has 3,082. And finally, the Denver Post published a Rockies fan guide, but the stadium pictured in the piece was not Coors Field. It was Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia. The Post tweeted, due to a production error, an image of Citizens Bank Park ran in place of Coors Field on the cover of today's Life and Culture section, Please enjoy this beautiful image of Coors Field that photographed yesterday. The Denver Post sincerely regrets the error. Spain and Jason Fitz filling in for the guys on Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz. We apologize for talking about stuff. I'm going to do our best a little later in the show to talk about nothing. But there's been stuff to talk about today.
What if we say nothing?
Like,
what if we say nothing, but it's about stuff? Does that count? I'm trying to figure all this out.
Yeah, that might be the ticket right there. Yeah, it's a show about nothing. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, with insurance for cars, home, boat, motorcycles, RVs, and commercial vehicles at 1-800-PROGRESSIVE and Progressive.com. So when we did our show, you can regularly hear us 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, weeknights, Spain and Fitz. And we were talking last night on our show as sort of a quick reaction to the story that was developing surrounding Conor McGregor. And after a good night's sleep for us, but presumably not for Conor or Dana White, we're getting more information about Conor McGregor, who threw a hand dolly through the window of a bus that carried a bunch of UFC fighters after a UFC 223 media event at the Barclays Center yesterday. Attacked the fighters. Was a bunch of different videos showed him and his posse running around behind the scenes, grabbing guard railings and trash cans and all sorts of other things to try to engage with this bus full of fighters. Apparently, McGregor, both angry about the fact that he will be stripped of his title by whoever wins the match this weekend, and also because somebody from the fighters' entourage had either threatened or had an incident with someone from McGregor's team, Artem Lobov, earlier in the week. So it was some sort of retaliation. But Dana White is now telling ESPN he had a text with McGregor after the incident, and McGregor was apologetic about the people he wasn't trying to hurt, but felt that the Khabib thing had to be done. That was the lightweight guy that he was going after the incident with his teammate. Now we have a video of Conor coming out of the precinct in cuffs, very tight jeans, which nobody wants to go to jail in tight jeans. Charged with 3 counts of misdemeanor assault and a count of felony criminal mischief. And Fitz, I guess the question is, Dana White on Get Up this morning was asked, let's listen to this first, I guess. Here's Dana White on if McGregor will be fired from the UFC.
And obviously, the big question everybody's been asking me, are you firing Conor McGregor? Are you firing? I mean, this is bigger than is Conor McGregor getting fired. There's just so many more moving pieces to this thing, and it's so bad. The guy to turn himself in, and he's probably going to be a convicted felon when this is over. By the way, Fitz, what a cop-out. What a cop-out by Dana White. Are you going to fire McGregor? Oh, this is much bigger than that. Well, this is your part of it.
I'm appalled by Dana's answer on it. And again, I want to qualify to everybody. I like MMA. I like UFC. I've gone to a bunch of these events. Dana White handled this in a terrible, terrible way. You can't come out and tell me Dana White's part of the reason people think there is some sort of staging to all of this, because he's not answering the questions. And the fact is, are you going to fire Conor McGregor? The first answer, if this is the most disgusting thing that's ever happened in the history of the UFC, answer 1 is, oh, heck yeah. Yeah, no, we're never going to work together again. Answer 2 is, but I want to remind everybody, this is even bigger than that, because this guy obviously needs help. That's the answer here that makes sense.
Yeah, and to me, this is a total cop-out of, and this is how it always works in every sport, right? This is the Grayson Allen indefinite suspension that's 1 game. This is the Lonzo Ball and other teammates indefinite suspension that's, let's see how this plays out, and do we want to keep them around, and let's see how the public reacts. Oh, they're still really angry? Okay, still suspended, right? And that's how this always works. So I'm not surprised that Dana White is waiting to see how everything plays out, both criminally and in the court of public opinion, before deciding for sure what's going to happen with Conor McGregor. But you can give a much more forceful statement than saying, oh, it's much bigger than that. Because your part in this is deciding what role he's going to have in the UFC after this.
Yeah, and also, it doesn't have to, the bigger than that portion of it doesn't affect Dana White. Hey, Dana, here's a clue. If he's a convicted felon when this is all said and done, why does that matter to you? I mean, are you not going to hire him because he's a convicted felon, or is that just a byproduct of what's going to happen? Because if all it is a byproduct, then do your portion of it. Handle your business now and let the legal system handle theirs. I mean, if you're going to act all appalled, then do something about it. Otherwise, just be honest with everybody and tell everybody the real truth, which is, well, we don't want to work with him unless there's a ton of money to be made. Then it'd be stupid not to work together.
Which, by the way, he's never going to say, right? He's never going to say, this is a terrible, disgusting thing that's probably going to end up making me a lot of money.
Right. But you know what? I would respect the heck out of him if he did. I mean, seriously, if he came out and was like, well, I don't want to work with him for a while, but I'd be dumb not to take that cash. Oh, I'd be all in on that.
Right. Well, he said on Get Up this morning he doesn't know why McGregor would do this. He, of course, got the text where McGregor was apologetic for hurting the other fighters that were not the ones he was aiming at. There's obviously a lot left to go in this story, but quite the outburst. And now 3 fights having to be canceled. You know he's not happy about that because that hits him where it really matters. Not in his moral place, not in his heart, but in his wallet. Coming up, an update from the Mac.
And now some words from our sponsor that you don't understand and I can't pronounce. Flap, pustule, jowls, nugget, gurgle, smear, curd, bulbous, bulbous, bulbous. What is it?
It's bulbous.
Bulbous. Tender, dongle, pork, and moist. Whether you're a construction worker, warehouse worker, or, frankly, a radio host, if you hear certain words on the job site, work can be uncomfortable. So, at least get work gear that's comfortable. Timberland Pro work shirts, pants, and boots, head to toe. Timberland Pro, not uncomfortable.
Great news. There's a quick way you can save money. Switch to Geico. Geico could help you get great coverage at a great price. And it only takes 15 minutes to see if you could save 15% or more on car insurance. Go to geico.com today and see how much you could save.
Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz filling in for the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. The Masters are what's on the menu for us this weekend. Now at B-Dubs, try the Bacon Boss Burger smothered in white cheese sauce, paired with a Sam 76 Buffalo Wild Wings. Buffalo Wild Wings, wings, beer, sports, available for a limited time while supplies last. Please drink responsibly.
God, that sounds so tasty. I just have to say it.
You always, you struggle to get through any food reads without
Bacon
drooling.
Boss Burger and white cheese
sound
sauce.
Good. Little Sam 76. Matt Kuchar, your leader at -3 through 5 today. Rory McIlroy tied, as well as Jordan Spieth, Henrik Stenson. Oh, they're all at -3 now. We got a tie for 7-way tie. Matt Kuchar, Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, Henrik Stenson, Adam Hadwin, Patrick Reed, and Charlie Hoffman, all tied for first at -3. Pack of guys below them at 2 under. That includes Tony Finau, Ricky Fowler, Zach Johnson, and Phil Mickelson. We'll keep you updated on Augusta as that second round continues. Let's head to the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, where Ramona Shelburne joins us from New Orleans. She flew all night. She's got some party voice. When we're both on the same show, at least people will be commenting on us talking about the same conversation instead of when we often get mistaken for each other. So since you're in New Orleans, let's ask you about a conversation we were just having about NBA players being bigger than the cities they play for. I think the conversation around Anthony Davis has grown with each year that he's in the league, but because he plays for the Pelicans, it still is never as much credit and as much attention as he deserves. Would you say that we still need the Pelicans to perform better on a playoff stage for him to finally get noticed the way he should?
Yes, 100%. Like, I mean, I think you can become a big star from anywhere you are, but it's always bigger in the big cities, right? Like, and it's not just big cities. It's cities that have history, right? Like, it's cities that have that basketball history and legacy. So, you have to be in the playoffs to, like, make some noise. Like, that's where the drama and the rivalries really are. Like, I think we've seen the last couple of years great regular seasons followed by very predictable postseason playoffs, right, that end in 4 times, in the same way, right? I would say we're probably heading in that direction again, but, maybe there'll be a slight tweak and Houston will win. But generally speaking, the playoffs are where things are settled. And if Anthony Davis had that one series against the Warriors that was a little tight. But other than that, it's just been regular season. And, look no further than last year when he missed some time and didn't even make the All-NBA team, right? Like, it's, People were. That's why he. You can't slip if you're in a market where, it's not a historically great market. You can't have an off season. Whereas year in and year out, if you're in New York, LA, or Chicago, or Philly, or something like that, you're going to get that attention year in, year out.
Ramona, do you feel like the attention the young generation of fans is paying to particular players, though, starts to change that tide? Because it feels to me like we've got more concentration on rivalry between guys than we do on rivalry between jerseys.
Yeah, but that's good, right? Isn't that good for the league?
Yeah.
I think some of that social media, some of it, look at Joel Embiid was on a team that had the worst 4-year record in NBA history, and he was still a star because of his personality. And it was only really this year when he played a lot that people started to understand how good of a player he was. But Joel Embiid was a big star before that, just because of his personality on social media, and he's calling everybody out. And I think now guys who have a little bit of Deion Waiters, right? He wrote that awesome essay for the Players Tribune last year. He's got a following just because of that, right? Because he kind of broke through, and that's not just basketball. And that's kind of every sport. If you put yourself out there in a way where you cut through the noise, and either go, we want to use some terminology, trending or going viral. The people will follow and people will be interested. Is that the question is, can you sustain that interest? And you have to do that in the court. And as to get back to Sarah's question, I think it helps when you're at a bigger market, or at least a market that has some history.
Seems like Ramona would be on our side that these golf guys need to do some sexual escapades in order to separate themselves from the pack. That's the problem. Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. Ramona Shelburne on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line joining us from New Orleans. Let's talk about the Warriors. Steve Kerr knocking his team effort last night, and Kevin Durant said the Pacers had a better strategy, which certainly sounds like he's implicating Steve Kerr in the loss. What do you make of the new look Durant, and do you think that we should have any concerns about the Warriors, whether that's injuries or complacency or anything else when the postseason gets here?
My biggest concern about the Warriors is that injury to Steph Curry. That's the only thing I would be worried about, because I remember a couple years ago when he had the same injury and he came back and he was not the same player. He just didn't have the same kind of burst, and he couldn't turn the corner on guys, and it was very obvious in the finals that he was not physically right, even though he had come back and he could have a good game. He could have some good performances, here and there. But when he needed that extra gear and when he needed that extra, Steph, right, that extra athleticism, he didn't have it. And so it's the same injury. And you wonder, okay, even if he's back for the first round of the playoffs, the second round of the playoffs, how much is he really going to be himself physically with coming off a sprained MCL? It's not just a sprained ankle. So that's the part I worry about. Yesterday was, Steve getting mad at his team, Kevin popping off with that sort of seemed like it was a little shade.
Subtle shade, yes, subtle shade.
Yeah, a little shade. I don't know if it was that Kerr or whoever did the scout or whoever came up with the overall strategy, whatever. It doesn't matter. Kevin does stuff like that sometimes. He gets upset, he gets frustrated, he kind of pops off, and then I guarantee you today he will have a very contrite apology for that. He's not trying to start anything. He's just, sometimes he kind of shoots from the hip a little bit and then has to walk it back. You see how he is on Twitter, right? He just kind of lets people get under his skin, and then he pops off a little bit, and then, maybe sometimes he uses the burner account and goes a little further. That's kind of Kevin, and I think you've seen him lose his temper quite a bit more this year, especially with referees, was led to all the ejections. And some of I personally just being around him, being around the team. Kevin's a guy who is, I think he's very influenced by who the loudest personality in the room is, that he's in. And on the Warriors, it's Draymond Green. Kevin and Draymond are really good friends. Draymond is famously hot-headed, right? Famously, short-tempered. Okay, and I think that rubs off on Kevin a little bit. And it it's not bad or good. He was like that in Oklahoma City. He was like that his first year, as well. But it wasn't quite as different. It wasn't quite as pronounced as right now. because Draymond was a little more under control as well, because he was kind of coming off the finals thing where he, cost them the finals with that ejection. A little more well behaved, but I think some of that, and just in a 10,000-foot view of the Warriors, for most of this year they've kind of been bored. They're like the really smart kid in the class who knows they can get an A, and it's hard to keep them motivated day in and day out. So sometimes they'll like cruise into that B+, right? Because their B+ is like easy. They don't have to even read the book, and they can get a B+. So I mean that's kind of where they are, and I think that's been simmering all year long, of just trying to keep them engaged and trying to keep them sharp during a regular season that is essentially meaningless, except for not getting hurt until they get to the playoffs.
Ramona, can you see any path for Philadelphia in the East? I keep trying to find a way because I like the story of excusing Philadelphia.
I'm going to see one because I want to see one, right? Let's go that direction. If they get up into that 3 seed and they win their first round series, and then let's say they get Boston without Kyrie Irving, heck yeah. Like, can't you see that? Like, I can see that.
I guess, but people say I'm crazy, so like maybe I'm just trying to justify.
Oh, that's for so many other reasons.
No, that's true. That is a fair point, sir.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, so, like, we could just be on that train. Why not? Because we want to be on that train. It would be really fun if Philly did that. I think they're a little, like, they're going to need to learn to win in the playoffs. Like that, generally with young teams, like, you don't run all the way to the finals your first time through. But, they are really good. Like, if they don't run all the way through, this will be one of the last years that happens, right? Because it reminds me a little of, they remind me of that Oklahoma City team when they had Durant, Westbrook, and Harden, where there was a couple of years in there where they got to the playoffs and lost early. And I remember one of them was against the Lakers. It was the last Laker championship year, 2010, and they played the Thunder in the second round, and it was a tough series. It was like 6 games, and Kobe afterwards basically said like, I'm glad we got those kids when they're still kids.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to be able to beat them later.
Yeah.
And the very next year they go to the finals, right? I mean, it was like you could feel that coming with Philly. And a lot of like how far they're going to go is going to come down to Embiid's health and whether or not Markelle Fultz can grow into living up to that number 1 draft pick that they used on him. He hasn't played many games yet. So like, can you count on him in a playoff series? Ugh. Hard to say.
You can count on him to knock out the best player on their team. That's about it so far.
Yeah.
No offense to him. Hey, awesome stuff, Ramona. Thanks for making some time for us, and enjoy New Orleans, but not too much.
Yeah, I will definitely not do that.
1 hurricane per day. Thanks, Ramona. Ramona joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Coming up, we all have our blind spots, and one of mine is WWE wrestling. Give us a call if you think you can convince me why WWE is cool and fun and cool. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. I am open to being convinced that I am wrong. Call us and tell us why. Spain and Fitz in for the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
You know, it's always so cool. It's always cool. The blacktux.com.
Oh, yeah.
That's been my go-to option for a while for looking great at special events and weddings, whether you're searching for a stylist selected outfit or maybe you want to build a custom look. The Black Tux has tons of new suits and tuxedos that make you stand out for the right reasons. To score $20 off your purchase, visit theblacktux.com/Dan. That's theblacktux.com/Dan for $20 off your purchase. The Black Tux, premium rental suits and tuxedos delivered.
Ryan! I don't know how else to say this, so I'll just say it.
What is it, Linda?
I think we should see other people.
Are you breaking up with me? On a roller coaster?
Well, we do have a lot of fun. Maybe we should stay together.
An emotional roller coaster? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
I just need a little me time.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
The Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz filling in. If I had to guess, I think Outsider Mike is playing this because it was a wrestler's theme song or walk-in music or associated with wrestling in some way. But guess who wouldn't know that? Me, because I don't know anything about wrestling. All of my wrestling interactions have either been getting a woo, smoking Sarah Spain from Ric Flair on the Le Batard Show, or Hulk Hogan. I remember Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
But we're going to have a Hall of Famer on.
That's something.
Yeah. We're going to have a Hall of Famer on, Jeff Jarrett. And I need to be convinced why I should care that I'm talking to a wrestling Hall of Famer. Okay. So I want your help. Call us, 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Can you convince me that wrestling is cool? WWE is cool. Here's your SportsCenter update. Big names charging ahead at the Masters. A handful tied at -3 for number one. Kuchar, Rory McIlroy, Spieth, Charlie Hoffman, Henrik Stenson among them. Tied for 9th, right behind them at -2. Our boy, Tony Finau. Ricky Fowler, Phil Mickelson, Zach Johnson among those tied for 9th at 2 under. Patriots are signing former Bills wide receiver Jordan Matthews to a 1-year deal. A source told ESPN's Adam Schefter. It's a boost to a receiving corps that lost Brandon Cooks to a trade this week and Danny Amendola to free agency. Matthews, 25 years old, limited to 10 games for the Bills this past season after being acquired in a trade from the Eagles. Finally, from Romania, a Romanian man who failed to convince a court that he was alive after he was officially registered as deceased by his wife has initiated a new lawsuit to annul his death certificate. Constantin Rileu worked in Turkey for more than 20 years and returned to discover that his wife had him officially registered as dead. He lost an appeal to overturn his death certificate in March because he appealed too late. From the grave, I suppose. Interesting story. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Let's go to Christian in Alabama. Christian, why should I like WWE?
Because Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, the main event for the Universal title, is going to be the best match in about 10 or 15 years. Why? Because if Roman wins, Brock's going back to the UFC, and in the past 3 or 4 weeks, they've been beating the crap out of each other with chairs and handcuffs and ring posts.
I mean, Christian's trying to make a compelling point there, Sarah. And I will say, I grew up a big wrestling fan as a kid. Like, I was a massive wrestling fan. And I will tell you this, and we'll get to more calls, but I'll tell you this quickly. A few years ago, I didn't realize how big a deal Sting was at the time. He was about to be in WrestleMania, and I have a buddy that knows him, so he offered to come on my podcast.
Were the police there as well?
No, not that Sting, the wrestler Sting. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know he was still relevant, so I had Sting on my podcast, and it was one of the best podcasts I've ever put up, numbers-wise. I was stunned, and all of my buddies were like, oh my God, yes, he's about to wrestle at WrestleMania. So I went to a WWE live event in Nashville a few years ago. One of the best live experiences I've ever been to. The way they handle it, the way they handle their merch, the way they handle the entertainment within the show, the app that you can integrate with while you're there. It is stunning.
So they put on a good show is what you're telling me.
From an entertainment standpoint, we could all learn from them.
All right. So, people are messaging me saying women are a prominent spot on the card. They're treated as equals. I've always heard that and liked that about it.
See?
But there's a lot of shows. There's a lot of people that put on good shows. I am confused by men and women in tiny clothes in a orchestrated, choreographed faux fight, and I realize it takes incredible, true athleticism. I'm just not sold. Let's go to Corey in North Carolina. Can you convince me to like WWE?
Yeah, I'm actually 100% behind you. Those guys that are in the Hall of Fame for WWE, they hold the Hall of Fame of pillow fighting. It's ridiculous.
It's a little more engaging than pillow fighting because, it's a little harder to throw someone through a table and not break their neck than it is to hit them with a pillow. But I appreciate that Corey has my back here. Let's go to Rex in Georgia. Rex, what's your take?
So here's the thing. You guys like movies, right? We all understand that Tony Stark is actually Robert Downey Jr. and he's not really Iron Man.
Yes.
These guys fight scripted and it's predicted. It's all scripted out. But they have to understand, I'm going to hit you with this chair, and you have to be okay with it, and you have to be good to go on and tell the rest of the match that way. So I see it as one act, action play with a bunch of stunts and minimal props. So these guys have to be okay with doing that.
So it's like theater.
That's why I like it. It's theater. It's theater plus stunt moves. By the way, you do your own stunt move. Oh, I'm going to put you through this table. You have to be okay, and then I'm going to jump maybe 15 feet. Drop an elbow on you, and I want you to kick out at 2.
Okay, theater is the best example I've heard, Fitz,
Bam,
so far.
Rex, that's bringing the heat, Rex.
That was good. That was good. Other people are comparing it on my Twitter feed to The Bachelor. You know it's like somewhat scripted and it's not totally real, but you get engaged with the stories. Another guy says it's like live soap opera for men. So theater, I get. So here's the thing. I've mentioned on this show before that action movies aren't usually my thing because I don't get as engaged in this sort of faux fighting combat stuff that I know is staged. And so I don't know if maybe I'm just not the person for WWE.
Well, maybe that is possible. I will say that I think that Rex makes a great point, though. Like, for most people, the action movie thing is a part of it. The soap opera part of it, and then just the contact part of it. Like, as much as we've been joking about what they go through in the ring, I will say the physical contact is real. While the endings are scripted.
Crazy athletes.
I mean, while the endings are scripted, what these guys put themselves through, like if you watch documentaries of 80s wrestlers, which I watched a lot because that's the era that I was into it as a kid, and you see what their bodies are like now, it rivals anything you see from offensive linemen in the NFL. So what they put their bodies through is particularly crazy, and so I want to at least say that part of it too.
Yeah, my friend Kevin, who's a great writer and documentarian, said it's a bit like improv. 95% of it is unmemorable or bad. A handful of really good matches with choreography, psychology, creativity. To me, it's like the fight scenes in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So yeah, a lot of people saying it's like theater or movies. One last one. Let's go to Brett in Pennsylvania. What's your thought, Brett?
Yeah, just wanted to say that, kind of reiterate what those guys were saying, is it's a kind of a big man's soap opera type deal. But as far as for the sport itself, you definitely couldn't ask for a better support for the fan base and doing more for kids than what all pro wrestling does. It's nothing like, obviously the antics we got going on in UFC right now and stuff. I mean, that's the end result of what these guys get when they put them up to this crap. So, I mean, the one good thing is you can at least take your kid to a fight, and you guys don't have to worry about, outlandish scenes like you got in boxing and UFC. So it's nice to be able to have some sort of avenue.
Yeah, we actually had Stephanie McMahon at our ESPNW Summit, and she talked a lot about the work. And it is incredible what a big role they play in a lot of kids' lives because it is so popular. You guys did a decent job of at least helping me understand it better. If I view it as full contact theater, which somebody said it's like you like The Bachelor, Bachelorette, imagine that full contact. That's what UFC or that's what WWE is. And then he corrected himself and said, I suppose The Bachelor's already full contact, but I mean violently full contact, not mashing genitals against each other. So that is the difference, although that does happen in WWE too, to be fair. Wow. Coming up, Fitz knew he'd be looking forward to watching sports on Sunday. He thought Masters, but he knew WrestleMania was there as well. Woo-hoo. Jeff Jarrett is being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame this weekend. We'll talk to him about WrestleMania. We'll talk to him about his Hall of Fame induction, and maybe ask him, is the UFC in some ways following the WWE's lead in terms of throwing things at buses? We'll talk to him next. Spain and Fitz, Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
Dan Le Batard Show, Stugotz. I'm Jason Fitz, Sarah Spain. We're in for the guys hosting today. There is no Dan. There's no Stu. We're sort of manning the fart, the station here.
The fart.
The fart.
I don't know where that went. That is the most appropriate description. Manning the fart machine is the best way to describe this show.
You're welcome, America. That's where we go.
You need coffee, bro.
Yeah, I'm 2 days without it. I think that's about to end. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. And look, I know earlier in the week, the Le Batard guys had Mean Gene on, and they like to have wrestlers on. And so I was sitting there thinking when we were filling in, I was like, well, you know what? I spend most of my time in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and this little suburb outside of Nashville. And there's a really famous wrestler there that lives there, and he happens to be going into the Hall of Fame tonight. So love this. We're going to the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line where Jeff Jarrett joins us. Jeff, you're in New Orleans. Congratulations on the Hall of Fame induction tonight. Walk me through the moment when you get the call that you're going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. What was that moment like for you?
Wait a minute. Well, first off, this is Jeff Jarrett. I appreciate you having me on. And if you think we're going to skip over you just talking about flatulence, when I get the intro of that. So what a great welcome. I've got a 12-year-old son, and back in the day we had whoopee cushions, but now they have apps. So
Yes.
Listen, I'll let you go do the research on those apps. So
Perfect.
What an intro here at WrestleMania weekend.
More importantly, did you guys know that when Andre the Giant used to fart when sitting on a bench, it would vibrate the length of the bench for everyone sitting on it, and he got a kick out of that?
Didn't know that bit of useless trivia, but thank you for enlightening me.
Yeah.
Good Lord, Jeff. I don't know how. We'll try all this again, Jeff. But in all seriousness, I mean, this is a huge accomplishment around WrestleMania, which is something that the wrestling world, just all eyes flock to it. So for you, you get to be out there and sort of relive some of the great moments you've had, but you also get to be in front of a new era of wrestling fans also. How do you soak all that in?
Oh man, it's very, very cool. And for me to be doing the show, let's not get too sappy here, but for me to be on ESPN radio, it's something that I have listened to every morning for years and years and years, going way back before you guys were on air. But anyway, to be talking about it, I'm standing here overlooking I'm at the Hyatt, overlooking the Superdome and the Smoothie King Center, and realizing that just a few short hours I am going to be stepping on that stage. WrestleMania weekend, Hall of Fame induction. It really, really is special. So I'm very grateful, very honored, and I would have never in my wildest dreams, 32 years ago to the day is when I had my first wrestling match, April 6th of 86. And here we are again. I'm in New Orleans and very, very excited. And the fans here and, reconnecting with all the guys that I've known for so many years. Early this morning, some things never change. At 7 o'clock, I was doing cardio and show us Shawn Michaels. So some things never change. It was pretty cool.
Hey, Jeff, I wonder, I'm used to hearing about all the famous wrestlers with the crazy names. At any point, did you think that you were going to use some sort of, crazy wrestling name? And then can you give us a couple rejected options?
Well, no, I got lucky. And certainly through the years, certainly back in the late 80s and early 90s, there were so many different types of we'll call it monikers and gimmick names. But my God-given name, and thank God it was a name that was usable for a professional wrestler. And if you won't, I'll spell it out for you. It's Jeff Jarrett. That's JEFFJARRETT. But no, I never had, I've had the Chosen One, the King of the Mountain, Double J, and a couple other nicknames, but never the complete name change, the Berserker or whatever it may be. I've always got to use my God-given name.
I can't, we're talking to Jeff Jarrett, about to be a Hall of Famer for the WWE on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. I can't have you on and not ask sort of a cliche question, but I'm really interested if you look back on your career and have one favorite match that stands out to you. Through the years, I've been asked that question a lot, and I have series of matches. Obviously, my matches against Shawn Michaels in the 90s are obviously some of my highlights. We're on a sports talk show, so I got the honor. In my mind, Shawn Michaels was not only the Michael Jordan of our industry, but he was also the Kobe and LeBron. He had that long career, performed at an incredibly high level year after year after year after year. And so, my series of matches against Shawn, and then another Hall of Famer, Kurt Angle. Late in my career, we had a series of matches that pushed each other. So I rank, those guys right up there. But man, the first time you win the world title in 2000, I wrestled the who's who: Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Ric Flair, DDP, Bill Goldberg. I could go on and on. So, but any one particular match, it'd be hard. But In Your House 2, July of '95, a lot of people, and I do have a couple of fans, they seem to think they put that at the top of the list.
Talking to Jeff Jarrett ahead of his Hall of Fame induction on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, is it harder to fight people that you genuinely dislike in real life, or easier?
Wow, you're coming with the strong game today. It's probably neither, but you have to be on guard a little bit more, and that's just sort of the nature of the beast. So, I like to shell out an ass whooping whether I like him or not.
Jeff, I will have to confess here, when I was a little kid, I used to go to AWA matches in Vegas, and at the time, the Midnight Rockers were my favorite thing in the entire world. So I rooted against you in those Shawn Michaels matches. I'm sorry for that, my friend. But you mentioned earlier winning the belt. I've always wondered, I have to ask, when you win them, do you get to keep them?
It depends, but you don't actually most of the time get to keep that belt that you have. But, things have changed. Back in the day, absolutely not. That belt was the only belt around, and if it got lost, you're in trouble and you got to replace it. But no, I've got a couple of titles, but the general rule is no. But nowadays, with the replicas and then the knockoff replicas, everything's bootleg. But no, you can. They make some really great replica belts, but no. The shorter answer is you don't get to keep the belt.
It's fantastic stuff, guys. You can obviously check out the Hall of Fame induction is tonight. You can check it out if you're a new subscriber on the WWE Network. In that process, you can also check out WrestleMania this weekend. Follow him on Twitter at Real Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, next time I see you at the Rudder, drinks are on me. Thanks for coming on, my friend.
Homeboy, I appreciate it. And Sarah, will you get him the app, the Flatulence app, just to sort of teach this guy?
I'm on it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Jeff Jarrett, thanks for the time, man. Just so cool to see this, Sarah. And for me, it's cool because when you watch these guys and you see how much they appreciate being able to come back and have that moment going into WrestleMania, I think it's a pretty awesome moment for him to get to sort of relive the glory days and get in front of a new audience.
I agree, and I respect his fart takes.
Yeah, see, did his fart takes make you? Are we coming over to the WWE?
Not as much as the fart facts about Andre the Giant got me to lean towards wrestling because anybody who actually moves a bench full of people with his flatulence is a true hero.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Next up, we'll get into some sports Tinder. If you don't listen to us on Spain and Fitz every Friday, you don't know this. You're going to be glad that you do. We're going to do some sports Tinder next, including a Yankees coach in trouble with a diehard Yankees fan. Now, your SportsCenter update. There's a whole bunch of people that are 3 under. I mean, a whole bunch of them. Matt Kuchar, Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, a bunch of other guys. They're 3 under. And then there's a bunch of guys at 2 under. That's your Masters leaderboard.
Wow, nailed it.
I'm so professional. UFC President Dana White says he has no interest in helping Conor McGregor with his legal troubles after the fighter was charged with 3 counts of misdemeanor assault and 1 count of felony criminal mischief Thursday. White told ESPN that he had a text session with McGregor on Thursday after the incident. Who knew text session was a term? He said McGregor was apologetic about the people he wasn't trying to hurt, but he felt the Khabib thing had to be done. And finally, Somerset, Kentucky, a Kentucky pizza delivery man went above and beyond in the name of customer service. Pizza driver Ralph Leitner was delivering pizza when he saw a home on fire. He ran inside, shut off the breaker, found homeowner Jesse Decker trying to put out the flames. He says, I got down on my hands and knees because the smoke was everywhere, made my way back into the kitchen, and got him to go out his front door. Decker says Leitner is a hero for saving his life. He says his parents raised him to help those in need.
You ever do that when you delivered pizza?
Not a chance.
Spain and Jason Fitz hosting today for Dan Batard and Stugotz. Spain and Fitz regularly 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern weeknights. It is Friday. We know you want to head to the club. We don't have the club around here, but we do have a great story for you. But first, the John R. Wooden Men's Player of the Year Award presented by Wendy's, the most prestigious individual honor in college basketball, awarded to the country's most outstanding player who's also making progress towards earning a degree. Tune into the College Basketball Awards show Friday, April 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on ESPN2. Brought to you by Wendy's, proud sponsor of the 2018 John R. Wooden Player of the Year. Mikey, keep this music coming for one of the greatest stories ever told. And as Dan likes to say, this is the part of the show where I read to you. This is a letter from a gentleman named Nick Burchill. He's at the Fairmont Empress Hotel in Canada. And this is the letter he sent the hotel. Dear Empress Hotel, this may seem like an unusual request, but I write to you today seeking a pardon. 17 years ago, a string of unfortunate events led to my being banned from your hotel. I would like to explain the incident. In 2001, I'd recently joined my current employer, and I was also in the Canadian Naval Reserve. The employer was hosting a customer conference at the Empress, and it was my first event with the company. Told my Navy buddies I was coming out west, and I was asked to bring Brothers Pepperoni from Halifax. It's a local delicacy. Because this was the Navy we were talking about, I brought enough for a ship. In a hurry, I'd completely filled a suitcase with pepperoni for my friends. Some of it in plastic, some in brown paper. I took whatever Brothers would sell me. This is the bag the airline misplaced. The bag reappeared the next day. I knew the pepperoni would still be good. It had only been at room temperature for a short time. It would, however, be quite some time before I could turn it over to my friends. I decided I should keep it cool. My room was a nice, big, front-facing room on the 4th floor. Well-appointed, didn't have a fridge. It was April. The air was chilly. An easy way to keep all this food cool would be just keep it next to an open window. Lifted one of the sashes, spread the packages of pepperoni out on the table in the windowsill. Then I went for a walk for about 4 or 5 hours. When I'd covered enough ground, I returned to the hotel. I remember walking down the long hall, opening the door to my room to find an entire flock of seagulls in my room. I didn't have time to count, but there must have been 40 of them, and they had been in my room eating pepperoni for a long time. In case you were wondering, Brothers TNT Pepperoni does nasty things to a seagull's digestive system. As you would expect, the room was covered in seagull crap. What I did not realize until then was that seagulls also drool, especially when they eat pepperoni. Remember, I've just walked into the room and startled all of these birds. They immediately started flying around and crashing into things as they desperately tried to leave the room through the small opening by which they had entered. Less composed seagulls attempting to leave through the other closed windows. The result, a tornado of seagull excrement, feathers, pepperoni chunks, and fairly large birds whipping around the room. The lamps were falling, the curtains were trashed, the coffee tray was just disgusting. I waded through the birds and reopened the remaining windows. Most of the gulls left immediately. One tried to re-enter the room to grab another piece of pepperoni, and in my agitated state, I took off one of my shoes and threw it at him. Both the gull and the shoe went out the window. By this time, I was down to one gull left, but it was a big one and it didn't want to leave. As I chased it around the room with a big hunk of pepperoni in his gob, in a moment of clarity, I grabbed a bath towel and I jumped it. It started to freak out, so I wrapped it in the towel and threw it out the window. I had forgotten that seagulls cannot fly when they are wrapped in a towel. This is happening fairly quickly. It's mid-afternoon. The Empress hosts a very famous and popular high tea. I suspect this is where the large group of tourists was headed when they were struck by first my shoe, then a bound-up seagull, which was unharmed, by the way. Let's go back to my housekeeping issue. The room was bad. There was a lot of damage. I was new to my company. I was trying to make a good impression. I decided that I would carry on for now and handle the whole thing later. I only had a few minutes before an important dinner, and I only had one shoe. Made my way to the side doors, recovered the shoe and the towel, laying in some wet soil on the walking path. Shoe was a mess, took it back to the room. Closed the windows. The air was ripe with the smell of digested pepperoni and flesh. I went to the washroom, rinsed the mud off my shoe. Now I had one wet, dark shoe, one dry, light shoe. In retrospect, I should have just wet the dry shoe. Instead, I chose to dry the wet shoe using the little hairdryer. It was doing quite well. I had the hairdryer jammed in there and the shoe drying nicely. Then the phone rang. I went to the next room to answer it. The power goes out. Turns out the hairdryer had vibrated free of the shoe and fallen into the sink full of water. Didn't seem to be 100% functional. Don't know how much the hotel's power I knocked out. I decided I needed help. Called the front desk. Someone came to help clean up. I remember the look on the lady's face. I had no idea what to tell her. I just said I'm sorry, and I went to dinner. Came back, my things were moved to a smaller room. Thought that was the end of it, till I was told my company had received a letter banning me from the Empress, a ban that I have respected for almost 18 years. I have matured. I expect responsibility. I come to you hat in hand to apologize. I hope you see fit to grant me a pardon. Thank you very much. Good news, Fitz. The pardon has been granted.
Woo-hoo!
Swipe right.
See? What a great story.
That is, you know what? I spent a lot of time touring. Never heard that in a hotel before. I'm a little creeped out.
It's such a great story. I took up all of our sports Tinder time telling it. CSPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. What a great story. Oh, man. My friend once fell asleep in the shower and flooded an entire hotel bathroom and room. Stephen A. Smith Show is next, featuring Fitz. Woohoo! Thanks for listening. Have a good one.